Hello and welcome. This is a virtual workshop on how to Wardley Map. The workshop is going to be led by the authors of the wonderful Value Flywheel Effect book, David Anderson, Mark McCann, and Michael O'Reilly.
Hey, everyone.
This workshop is being hosted by IT Revolution, and we're so happy that you are here to join us. Wardley mapping is fascinating and it's been making the rounds around the community, but I think a lot of people either don't know what it is or feel intimidated by it when they see it, but it provides a great opportunity to really better understand what the potential paths forward might look like for your company, help align business and technology, and so much more. So I'm going to hand it over to David, Mark, and Michael. They're going to walk you through this wonderful workshop. If you have questions, you can post them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll help get those answered as well as we can. David, I'll pass it on to you.
That's great, Leah. Thanks very much. Much appreciated. Hi, folks. My name is Dave Anderson. I'm one of the authors of the book, and very happy and glad everyone's joined the session. This is going to be good fun. I'll let the other guys introduce themselves.
I'm Mark McCann, architect at Globalization Partners and contributor to the Value Flywheel Effect book.
Yep, and like Mark, I'm also a practicing software architect with GP Globalization Partners, and co-author with the book.
Good stuff. Thank you, Mike. So we're going to use a Miro board here. So Mark, do you mind popping the link in the chat? So what we'll do is we'll it's just a read-only Miro board. So if you want to just jump in and kind of navigate around the board at your own pace, that's fine. And we'll post PDF of the board to the Slack channel for the IT Rev Book Club afterwards. If there's any QA questions or comments, just please pop them into Zoom during the call and we'll hit them. So I will first of all share my screen. Okay, and hope you can see that. So we'll just kind of we've kind of got three frames here. We'll kind of walk through. So what I'll do is I'll just put this in present mode to kick off while we're kind of talking about the session, and then we'll deep dive into the canvas. So let me see. So first of all, just going to go through the kind of schedule here. So we're kind of going to talk about mapping the canvas and the kind of the goals of the session. And then we will explain the value chain of the actual Wardley mapping canvas itself. And then we'll start mapping, and we'll basically reflect at the end and see what patterns have come out. I would encourage you to put any questions or comments you have in. Mark and Mike we'll keep an eye on those, and we'll jump in. We'll keep this pretty informal. We'll kind of chat as we go, which is usually the best way of doing mapping. I find that it should be an informal exercise, so it is really a structured conversation. That's the best way of describing it. I would say the goals of this session are a basic understanding of Wardley mapping, an introduction to the steps required to create your map, and then most importantly, I would say an understanding of what a mapping session feels like. It's very daunting when you see these maps on Twitter or social or in the book, and it feels like it's a very academic, complex process. It actually is quite informal, and so what we'll almost do in the second half of this is replicate what a mapping session is like. And myself, Mark, and Mike have done this many times over the past 10 years. So first of all, the Wardley mapping itself. I'll give a quick kind of primer on this. As you probably know, it was created by Simon Wardley. He's a researcher in England, probably around 15 years ago, I'm thinking. He did a lot of kind of cloud conferences around 10 years ago, and the technique became widespread. Simon's good enough that he's effectively open sourced the technique, and he's got a lot of content around the internet. If you look, and we have a few links there on the next frame, which I can show you. And so really the background behind mapping is when Simon was the CEO of a company, probably about 13 years ago, he realized, and I'm paraphrasing, all strategy is made up. He was just amazed by the lack of strategy at that level. I'll not comment on that, but that was his opinion. So he wanted something that he could figure out the landscape better. So he starts off with an anchor kind of user. So it always starts off with the customer at the top here, and there's two kind of axes. The y-axis along top to bottom here is the visibility axis. Things that are near the top are more visible. Things towards the bottom are less visible. So in this map, this business owner speed is very visible, and maybe cloud capability is less visible. And then from left to right, you've got the evolutionary axis. And every component goes through an evolutionary cycle. So things will start in Genesis, which this thing is wonderful. It's like, AI or, flying drones or whatever. This thing it's a wonder. So we're amazed this thing has worked. It's a fantastic invention. Next goes custom build, is we're starting to understand more about this thing, but it's quite difficult to build. Then it goes into product. There's now customer demand for this. Everyone recognizes this is good. Customers are using it, and we're starting to refine this and make this better. And then finally, I think it's going to commodity or utility, which is it's the cost of doing business. Everyone has one. It's no big deal. We need one. We're down to small margins. So some things evolve quite slowly. Other things evolve very quickly. And the example I always like to use is computing. Back when, if you think back in the 50s and 60s, or say the 60s, computers were this fascinating thing. The companies were starting to buy them. You see photographs of huge, big computers getting wheeled into companies. Then they became custom built in the 70s. There was lots of different types of computers. Then you get into the product, the PC era, or where they're starting to become a bit of a commodity, and they're starting to really innovate. And now they are actually a commodity where you can just go and rent a virtual instance off any of the cloud providers. Cloud come in. So it's a really nice way you see that evolved over probably 50 years. So really, when we talk about the Wardley Map itself, you get the business owner as the anchor, and these first components are things that business owner needs. So this business owner needs speed, and they need cost, i.e. low cost. Everything below that is dependence on. So speed depends on, here we have an agile program. Speed depends on serverless first. Cost depends on build cost and run cost. So you start mapping out the dependencies. And the way we usually start this map is we start with a single kind of vertical value chain, and then we start building it out. I kind of like this map here because this is a map we created many years ago, and I think the shape of it is nice because usually you have the things that people are most interested in the top left, and then there's usually a dependency down towards the bottom right. And this almost top left to bottom right shape shows that these lower things have evolved quite well, which enable the things in the top left. And so there's also some needs that are commoditized. This doesn't mean they're any less important, it just means we've got very good at them. So cost here doesn't mean it's low cost, particularly, it just means cost is very well managed. And this doesn't really mean that applied AI is particularly kind of expensive or whatever, it just means we're still learning about it, still evolving. Anything I missed there, Mark or Mike, around the basic sort of run through?
No, I think you covered it, Dave. Just like with mapping, really what we're talking about is situational awareness. We can map a landscape. We can discuss, the value chain in relation to position and visibility. And position has meaning, so the higher up the value chain, the more visible it is. The lower down, the less visible. And then depending on where it is along the evolution axis, it's, we can talk about how evolved that particular component is. But when you can discuss your value chain in that with that sort of situational awareness and have that, the map actually apply meaning to your value chain, then you get into the why of movement. And then you begin to sort of have good conversations around where we're at, what are the things that we can do to apply certain movement. And that's really when you get into the conversation around strategy. So as you said, it's to facilitate that well-informed conversation and to kind of, remove barriers and go across different boundaries. And, so a product person can talk technical and technical people can talk business, and we can kind of come together. So it's a very powerful technique.
There's definitely a nice there's a nice cross-disciplinary nature of mapping for sure. Good stuff.
We've got our first question around how do you prioritize the blue dots? Best case work top left or lowest lowest cost to the left? What way do we prioritize the blue dots in this mapping pipeline?
That's a great question. Now, when I remember this map here is from the book. I think it's chapter 4. So we build this map out in the book. But this map started with speed and cost as two sort of, I would say, big kind of customer needs. And then as we worked out the dependencies, we started to figure out some of these dependencies here. How could we move these? So the things over on the left here kind of evolved. They came in later. And the map, this was actually derived from a real map from a real company. Not hard to guess which. But these things came in later on the left. But we believed that we needed to improve speed and cost to leave some what called space for innovation on the left. So I think the prioritization would be which making a move in which of these blue dots will give us the biggest kind of ROI. But what will unlock movement elsewhere? I think that's probably the best way. Would you agree with that, Mark? Fair enough.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a great question. It's a hard question because you don't know what's the highest value.
And the beauty about this is you can challenge that type of thinking. Oh, I think we should invest in an agile program first, or I think we should invest in lowering our run costs first. But you can have a very quick and easy debate amongst us to say what do we think is the best thing that we should do first? What is our top priority? And it's you're challenging the map. You don't need to necessarily challenge Dave or Meg or Mark, right? So you can have a really good, interesting conversation that's really cheap and really fast and gives you some situational awareness about where you should invest to meet those needs.
Good stuff. Okay. So there's some really nice resources. I'll not spend too long on this. Now, like I say, I'll export these frames as a PDF and post them on the Slack channel so you can hit these links yourself. I'll not talk to this in a lot of detail. We have a nice article up on the IT Revolution blog about how to map. And there's a few brilliant resources. Probably the best one is learnwardleymapping.com by a guy called Ben Monsieur. It's a brilliant site. Ben is brilliant at explaining mapping, and it's not just for IT. You can map anything. So there's some great stuff. Online Wardley Maps. This tool is brilliant. It's a great way to see some it's a great way to get your hands dirty by this maps as code technique. There's also this kind of there's a whole list of these here. So like I say, we'll export this and pop this in the channel so you can have a look through. Okay, so let's jump into the canvas. Again, this was created by Ben Monsieur, who also goes under the name of kind of hiredthought.com. And like a lot of different techniques like the business model canvas, jobs to be done, there's a whole bunch of different canvases. It's a great way, I think, to teach people a technique and walk through the key questions. Certainly when we started mapping before this came out, and when you jump straight into the map, you always go back and start answering these questions. So this is really just kind of laying out in a nice way the questions you ask yourself as you draw the map. So it's got a nice kind of structure. Really, it's around number one, purpose. What's your purpose? Where does this organization exist? What's the scope? What are we mapping in this session today? Who are the users? That should always be near your first question. What are their needs? Then you start to blow out your value chain, which is effectively this y-axis of the map with things that are more visible at the top and less visible at the bottom. And then we get into the mapping, we start moving things around. So we're going to walk through this as almost like an illustrated example. And really it's like we found that when you start to use these canvas, the first 2 or 3 questions could take you like an hour or two to figure out like who's our customer is a brilliant question. You can some companies, some teams could spend an awful lot of time answering that question. But it's nice to maybe just make a few assumptions to align the group mapping and then get into the map itself. Let me see now. So what we've picked to illustrate this, and this is just really an illustration. Let me just zoom in a bit here so people can read it better. So we've almost pre-populated the first 5 panels because I do want to get to the mapping itself. So first of all, what's your purpose, right? So what the scenario we're going to use today is it's a regular company who wants to get more from the cloud. I'm not saying it's by regular company in quotes. It's not a tech company. It's not a startup, enterprise versus. It's just a company who's using the cloud who want to get more from it. So let's keep it fairly high level. It is usually you'd be more specific, but here we're mapping across individuals working for different companies, so we're trying to keep it fairly generic. The scope for this session we'll have is the company's cloud strategy. What is this company's approach to the cloud? And that could be different things. So let's keep it to that. Let's not go on about product strategy, any kind of sales versus service strategy. This is really about the cloud strategy. The user.
When we do the scope for real, we spend a lot of time talking about what's out of scope. So it's usually always a good conversational topic to say, what do you think's in scope, what's out of scope? And you get a lot of really rich interactions with team members and people you're mapping with around where those boundaries lie. And it always invites good conversations.
Scope's a good one because if you don't define that early, you end up what we call mapping the world. It just goes wide and you kind of go rein it back in. So it's good, kind of good hygiene to get those questions answered up front. For this, another thing about mapping I find is often we have the main anchor user or customer has been someone too low. So for cloud strategy, you could say it's the engineering manager. I'd say it's not even the CTO, but it's more like the CEO or the board member. So think about the company as a whole. You can map at a team level, but sometimes it's good to kind of, think kind of big. So for this example, we've thought about the board member as a persona of someone who's thinking about the whole company, not just a team or department. And for me, I like to simplify the user needs because you're better to have a small number of fairly simple, obvious user needs than go broad here. If you end up with 25 user needs, your map's going to get really complicated. So I would think 2 or 3 things that maybe just capture a couple of key needs, or even one if best. So really we've said, what does the board member need from the cloud strategy? I would say effective spend. They want to, it's not that they want low spend, but they want effective spend. They want to get their money's worth. And 2, time to value. So I've said time to value over time to market. We talk about this in the book quite a lot. How quickly can we get software out the door and creating value actually in the hands of users? So it's really speed and cost. What these 2 things are.
Your great comment there about not putting too much in the board, not putting too much on the map is something that I always fell into, that trap of let's put more stuff on. And then Dave might always be like, yeah, we can ignore that for now. We can ignore that for now. We need to simplify and focus on the essence of the thing we're trying to do. So it's something that I've learned to get better at over time.
Holistically, okay, Mark. I love the 20 stickies. Can we get down to 2 or 3?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is good. I mean, it's you want to encourage people to throw down ideas, but then you want to come back in. It's almost like the diverge and converge and something. So then we get into the value chain, and this is probably, value chain. This is not a value stream. Sometimes people use the words value chain and value stream interchangeably. This is a value chain, so that it's good to understand what this means. Your board member is your user, and they have a single user need. So what I've done for this is I've almost brought together speed and cost into business value. Now, because we're creating this map, we kind of know that by business value, I'm not talking about how good is our product, what's the revenue. I'm thinking about the speed and cost of what our cloud strategy is producing. So business value is a need. It's got a dependency. So everything below this line here are dependencies. So I'm going to say business value depends on leadership in your company. This is just general leadership across, say, your engineering managers, product managers. Leadership depends on technical leadership. Again, in the scope of a cloud strategy, you need to create the right environment so that you can execute on a good cloud strategy. Then you want your technical leadership, i.e. your architects, to be very clear on what does that mean and how do we actually create that. Technical leadership have a need or depend on engineer cloud skills. no point having a very advanced cloud strategy when your engineers are short of skills. You need to make sure that they have the skills they need. Then once your engineers have what I would call kind of modern cloud skills, you need to have the right kind of operations setup or infrastructure. You can't have like a 20-year-old IT kind of compliance with engineers looking to use, containers and serverless and all sorts of things. So this value chain is quite important to have a fairly simplistic value chain they start off with, because we're going to add more to it when we get to the map. Okay.
I think there's some questions coming in before we get into that, Dave. Maybe worth calling out. So, some of the earlier ones, both around why cost and run cost lies in commodity utility section. I think that was from the earlier map itself. I don't know if there's any answer to that. I think it was from the very initial.
Oh, the earlier map.
Yeah, the initial map. Yeah.
So I would say So I would describe that as optimized. So I think when we had worked this map before, it's not that cost was low or cost was not important. It was optimized, but we had got good at cost. So this really equates to, if you'd redraw this might be a good FinOps practice or cloud economics. I think over a number of years, engineering teams were aware of cost and really know how much things were, what's the build and run cost. So I think that's a very mature attitude for engineering teams. So we would say that it's not that it was not important, it's still very important, but it's well optimized.
Yeah, and I think if teams are starting their cloud journey and didn't quite understand what things were going on, your cost and cost optimization could have been over in custom, because you hadn't really figured out how to actually make your costs visible, how to apply good cost management practices, and how to sort of optimize your costs. So as you get better at these things, that it evolves from left to right, and that's where it ended up for us.
Yeah, completely. It's almost like expertise. Almost when you're good at stuff, it comes over to the right.
The other question in this one: is there a reason that the business owner is in the product column? That's a good one we talk about a lot.
That's a very good question. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So let me hit that in a second when I get to the map. We'll hit that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And next one, who can be the audience for the Wardley Map such that it has value for them?
Very good question. So what I've found is, so let's get into the map now. So what I've found is the team that are creating the map, it's really for that team. So if there's 4 or 5 of you sitting doing a map, it's for those 4 or 5 people. You're not creating the map to show other people, you're creating it for yourselves to gain insights. Now you may, once you have those observations or insights from the map, you may decide to share the map or even just share the observations. Say there's 2 teams of architects and one team sits down and maps something out, and the second team are aware of mapping. You could show them the map and tell them the story, share the insights. Fine. If the second team did not understand Wardley mapping, you may just extract the insights and say, we think we should do X, Y, and Z. So the map is for the group sitting doing the mapping session. It's a bit like the plan. Once you get into battle, you throw away the plans. So it's really it's like you're working out. So I think that's a brilliant question.
One of the things we typically do a lot is, once we've challenged the map and been working with it for a while, is we'll start to add some notes to it as well, so that a different audience can easily consume the components of the map or any of the insights or any of the observations. So it's a good step. Once you have something that you think is good enough, you can start to add some annotations and some notes to it as well, so that it makes it easier then to share and bring other people on, get them up to speed with what you're doing.
Yeah, so you'll see in the book in chapter 4, we build this map. We can, I think it starts off from memory as a value chain, and things start moving across. This here's an annotation, just a couple of quick notes on the map, which is fine. Just you can remember the key points later.
Yeah, well, there are a few more questions come through as well. Can you use Wardley mapping as a more effective project portfolio management approach? Fernando is asking for his wife, Anna.
Ooh, that's a good one. What do you think? I shouldn't be getting all the questions here. You two should be getting some as well.
Yeah, well,
that's a good one.
I've seen certain maps where we used to map like we we've done maps before where we're mapping teams' capabilities, or where teams are kind of working to within an organization and different types of teams and stuff like that. So there definitely is disciplines there where you can kind of leverage mapping to have a conversation around, well, how do we get a team from A to B, or how do we get a project that aligns to an overall kind of portfolio? If you've got if you're, notice here some conversation in the chat around the value stack, or the value chain, which is so if your value stack is literally a list of projects or something like that, you can use mapping to kind of it's probably a bit more of an advanced topic though, where we talk about like manipulation of the evolution axis to be a wee bit more kind of industry or subject matter kind of specific, but you definitely can, and there are techniques around it. I'm trying to wonder if there's any kind of resources we could direct.
Yeah, we could. I think even if you just started to map it out and say, well, what's our portfolio for, and what are the needs of the business for that portfolio, and what are the components, what are the projects that you're actually managing in that portfolio, and map them and where you think they might be and what they depend on and sort of the interlinkage of them. That'll give you some insight, and you can even have a conversation about how visible is this to the people at the top, the people who want that portfolio. How involved are some of these teams or some of these projects? Are they sure bets, or are they more risky bets? So you can start to have those type of conversations.
There's also a nice, I don't want to go off topic a bit here, but there's a nice technique in DDD, domain-driven design, around creating like a context map.
Yep.
You can break a portfolio down to capabilities, or it could be product teams, and like map them and see where they are. And you might see a portfolio, one portfolio may be very in custom, another might be in product. And you might think, is the one in custom, is that our key business, or is that like an enabling or supporting portfolio? So you can map out the different parts of the organization, products and portfolios, see where they sit. And the stuff that's high value could be high up in product. And if you've got something that's high value and it's low down in custom, then maybe you're in trouble. So you have to figure out how you'd move that. So it's probably nicer to map out portfolios and products, not necessarily probably more product management or product envisioning your portfolio structure, as opposed to straight project management.
Yeah, it would certainly give you a good situational awareness about your portfolio and what the elements of it are as well.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah. You can grab something on that.
You want to do a few more questions, or do you want to keep going?
I was just going to add, Mark, on that last point. We've been working on a Wardley map this week where we're maybe looking at a product value stack. And again, there are certain dependencies within that value stack, or sort of components within it, that are in different spaces within the evolution kind of axis. And part of that is, how are we actioning progression, and how are we progressing in the actual need of the users of that product, and action our strategy around, where we invest our squad's time and stuff like that. So I know there's some chat going on there in the stream. So you're spot on. That's how we have been leveraging mapping as well, just on a daily basis. So it's good.
Sorry. A few more quick ones then we can continue on. Could one have a user need such as risk-based? Not sure on the context around that, but you could say
risk-based.
Yeah, so stuff on the left-hand side is more risky, stuff on the right-hand side is less risky. So you maybe something there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Not dwelling on too much. You can maybe add some more context
if
to it.
The risk is expertise, maybe, but I'm not sure if it's security risk. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I suppose there's a quick comment. Things on the left, like sometimes you joke that the genesis phase is the graveyard of ideas. So a lot of things come in from the left and they die. Things that are probably of less risk go across to the right. So something on the right hand side will be more solid, and of stuff on the left is kind of more sort of out there.
Difference between value chain and value streams. What do we see?
Ooh, that's a good one. For me, a value stream is almost like a stack where you're showing dependencies. A value stream is almost like process movement of value through something. Yeah, I'd see a value chain probably slightly more static, and a value stream probably is more process activity driven. Don't know if you think about that. Good one.
Okay, answer that. Answer that. This is a different type of value chain from marketing VC. This VC is more like a dependency. Oh, this value chain is more like a dependency map. Okay, yep, answered.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
When trying to keep a Wardley map simple, how is that working when trying to think about systems?
It's difficult. I always should say, I mean, there's probably a rule of thumb that if you've any more than 10 or 15 things on a map, you've gone too deep. So try and think hard about the granularity of your components. If you start putting things in here like a Java class, or if you go too low, you're in trouble. So you're better to go big and then break it down. I think when you're thinking of a software system, you could start putting every single application and even service on here, but you run out of road very quickly. So you need to almost abstract. It's a bit like the reverse of functional decomposition, where you're thinking maybe you've got 10 services for billing. You might just put in billing as a thing, as opposed to doing all 10 services, and then maybe do a submap for billing.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it starts to get too busy, the cognitive burden becomes too high. So then you want to create a submap that helps shift some of that cognitive load into something else that you can put in a different context or bound a little bit more. Will we continue on and we can ask a few more questions?
Cool. So go back to that question about the customer, the anchor. So I would always I made this yellow. You'd notice we were using a person thingy and dots. We've just used stickies here because we were often whiteboard in either Miro or Mural or even on an actual whiteboard with stickies. So the nice thing about stickies is you can move them around. For a while we used to draw them and then rub things out, but that get very messy and your hands get very dirty. So you'd find with stickies, you sit and maybe move things around. So you'll do that on a physical whiteboard as well. But this top one is really the anchor, the user persona. And I usually just put it here. For me, it's slightly different because it doesn't really matter where it sits. It's handy to have it kind of in the middle of the map. So it kind of look funny if it's over here or way over there. So it's usually just put there just to make it read easy. But certainly once you get down into these components, then the position is important.
Yeah, there's a nice question along to that. What does a multi-user map look like? And it can get complex, so you need to be mindful of what your anchors are. You can have one or two, that's fine.
What you could do is, you could do something like that, CEO, and we often do this, and just say there's another dependency there, and just to make it handy, put it like that. So I would usually just sit them beside each other. We've definitely done maps with maybe 2, maybe 3 users. I think once you get beyond about 3, it gets very messy. Yeah. So again, I would just use personas. If you're sitting going like a CTO, a chief product officer, and maybe a CFO, I would just put down, C-suite member or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get in. So again, what you see here, I've taken the value chain from the left and pretty much just copied it and dropped it in here. I've just changed the color of that just to illustrate the point that this is a slightly different type of component, and I've added a second one there just to illustrate that point. So usually here we think, okay, well, let's think about we're relatively happy with our horizontal placement, and kind of what I want to get into now is, as we start mapping this out, is I want you to think about the way we talk when we're doing this. It's informal, and I'll call it a couple of sort of piece of advice as we do this. Mapping should be a conversation. This is not an architecture diagram. It's not formal. We're not going to compile this. It's just to share ideas. So that's what the purpose of this map is here. Let me just see. There we go. So, right. So for business file, so I'd like to focus on maybe the bottom 2, because we did the session last Tuesday, sorry, 2 days ago. A similar session, and we kind of focused on these top few components, which was a good discussion about leadership and technical leadership. So it's worth maybe going back and listening to that, but maybe just to mix it up a bit, we'll focus on some of these things down here as we do this mapping session. So business value, I'm just going to put it pretty much say, we're going to keep it early product. It's something we're good at. We can always get better at it. We're pretty happy with it. We're also relatively happy with leadership. and tech leadership. Don't really want to get into that too much because we want to focus the conversation lower down. So just saying, for me, I think certainly these three, they should be in product. You want to focus on business value, on your leadership and technical leadership. That's kind of you don't really want to, if something's over here, you're thinking maybe we can outsource that. And if something in here, you're getting better at it. I think if you're a startup or maybe relatively new, or maybe you have to change in leadership, you may realize that we have some work to do to improve our engineering, whatever capability, which you may slip over to custom, but you want to get it back here. So you're focused on it. If it gets over here and you think we're going to outsource leadership, that's not a good idea. I just put them here.
So Dave, are you, in terms of just challenging the map there in position, so you're assuming then we're using known leadership kind of ways of working, so we'd have good sort of practices around observability. We're reasonably consistent, so we would be in the product space where
again, for our cloud strategy, we're fairly aligned on speed and cost. We're pretty good at that. Maybe it's a company that's been in the cloud for a few years. We're okay. We've got semi-decent, throughput through our door over deployment frequency is okay. Our costs are fairly managed. We have a decent we're now kind of OpEx around cloud. We're not just doing CapEx and throwing a load of money at it. We understand what our spend is, and you can always get better, but we're pretty much on top of a decent cost optimization practice. We have a leadership team in place that understand the cloud strategy is good, and this is something that we understand that provides great value to our business. And maybe we have architects or principal staff engineers who are aligned in this cloud strategy and kind of get it. So I'm not going to say we're super mature, but we're up and running, we'll say. So I put them in kind of product. But I kind of want to focus on these ones here. We can maybe think of a scenario to actually, we hadn't discussed this beforehand, but maybe this is a fairly traditional cloud company that are starting to think about moving to serverless. There you go.
Here we go.
That might sort of change some of the slower stuff. So you've, costs are running pretty good. Again, good leadership team in place, and you've a decent kind of architectural team or whatever. But say you started to add a serverless first strategy, or maybe more serverless architectures, and there's some cloud skills that need to be improved. So let's maybe add in an inertia point here. So often when we think about something that's in that kind of custom, I'm just copy and pasting this. When we think about something as in that custom area, we think about, right, we believe cloud skills is here because maybe we have a lot of engineers that are quite comfortable with infrastructure as a service. Maybe they're doing a lot of cloud formation or Terraform, etc. But we want to move them to using some services, and there is an inertia point here, which is maybe we would like to get these over around here. So just ask you guys, what do you think would be a good how do you want to describe that inertia point?
So this is a scenario where really we're moving from, say, a more traditional kind of maybe legacy based architecture, and we want to sort of embrace some more of modern managed service type things within the cloud. Our org is probably investing a lot of training and building up developer skill sets, and investing a lot of custom training in terms of our stack itself. So again, it's probably custom. The inertia point as well, Dave, is an interesting point, because again, this is where this is the we talk about this as the why of purpose. This is our current state, but then really the inertia point signifies this is something we want to move from here to here, because we're going to get business value, so we can talk about how we're going to move it. So the engineering cloud skills, things that hang off it is
what do you think would be the inertia point? Maybe
it could even just be past success, right? Past experience, right? This is how we've done it in the past on our on-premises type infrastructure. This is how we built monolithic, and tiered sort of applications.
Is it fear of change?
Could be, yeah. There could be multiple
so
reasons for it.
Yeah.
Let's say there's an inertia point, which is fear of change. Like what we did before works really well. We don't really want to move to this new idea. So, so then we might think about what are some. Do we have any key dependencies from engineer skills that might help us move across? So what would potentially help us move across?
Yeah, so there's things like, seeing success stories, right? There could be some hey, this isn't something to be feared. These other companies have done this, right? We talk about this a lot in the book, right? There's that existence proof that, hey, we're going to adopt this new way of working or this new technology. It's hard being the pioneer. It's hard to be first. So you can remove that fear by showing proven examples out there in the marketplace or in the industry, and maybe in an industry like yours. So one of the things we had great success with was getting that external validation, or getting companies like ours who were doing sort of stuff that we were trying to do internally, seeing them externally at conferences or at events, right? So it removes that fear factor a little bit, right? Having that existence proof out there that these things can be done.
Yeah, but from there, what I would say is, what are we doing to facilitate moving squads? Like, so at the minute, what is our current training?
Yep.
Like, what is, have we got any good examples in the organization already of that particular piece of work? Developer and really getting into developer enablement, or team enablement. So what is that?
I want to say
maybe
refresh training and workshops. What else do you want to say? Maybe there is. So maybe it's developer experience.
Yeah, and that could be things like a golden path to production, right? For some of the new stuff, right? It could be some patterns that make it easy in the new environment. And Mike makes a great point there. It's like, it's not, you could just point at external success stories and that's all wonderful, but until you see it working in your context or working in your ecosystem, it doesn't become real, right? So I think it's making it real by bringing those, hey, these are the things we're doing, but here's what working in your pipelines, in your environment, in your accounts. That removes a lot of the fear.
Yeah.
So,
and is there anything there as well from a technical leadership perspective? So say in this scenario, technical leadership, because they're in product, I'm kind of wondering, so they're aware of it.
Well, maybe is there something, does that actually hang down off there? Maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of wondering. Is like, from a technical leadership perspective, are they backing teams to try new things? Is there support from technical leadership?
Well, maybe you could have a don't open a can of worms here, but you could have a very traditional architecture team that haven't really been hands-on. Yep. And there's maybe a little bit of lead by example.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of this, and we touch on this a lot, but there's psychological safety that is needed here, right? In the organization to try stuff, to again lead by example, creating the developer environment, the success stories. It's all about creating the psychologically safe environment, so that as the engineers are trying to adopt these new skills and ways of working and practices and technologies, that it's okay to not get it right first time. It's okay to try new stuff. It's okay to not be 100% perfect out of the gate, right?
Yeah. And let's assume that there's good. So I remember the scope here of this map is really around the cloud strategy. So it's really around trying things. There's a bunch of other things that are scope. So are we encouraging people to experiment with their solutions and what they're doing from a cloud perspective? Success stories is about maybe there's different products or portfolios that aren't aware of what's happening. So maybe there's something in a town hall they share that, this other team have created the service architecture. So there's stories being shared. Usually the technical leadership in the company, you have big influence over the engineers. So it's just something that these technical leaders are talking about how great this new approach is, and they're, maybe demoing things, talking about things. So it's kind of, as you start to see about different things. There's definitely, I think, an investment in developer experience.
Yeah, and the other thing to factor into that is, you know, if you look outside the org, and we talk about like patterns and things that are at play that are going to influence this picture regardless. But is there access to content and good training outside of the organization and material? And I think maybe that's in there in the middle, isn't it? That's the product. So that would be that stuff. So that's why that's sitting there.
And I've lifted that up as well. I've lifted that up here a wee bit. There's a comment there about should it be closer to leadership? I think that's a good shout. So I'd maybe popped up a bit. There's a whole different map around how you do training. I mean, again, do you use something like a cloud guru, or do you start writing your own courses? Again, I'd be using something that's out there.
Well, when we've done this in the past, one of the first things we always had to do is give teams access to, like, accounts and access to the services. So it's the environment. Have they got a sandbox or a playground, or a safe area to experiment?
And seeing some of the chats there, and there is very much you want to be in the coaching, mentoring mindset, not necessarily, hey, we're going to bring in a load of consultants to do workshops. And the success, when we had real success, was that whenever our internal people were the ones delivering the workshops and delivering the training. So we'll train the trainer mindset, right? Get them experience, but making it real for your context, tailoring all the content for your ecosystem is a big thing, right? And we talk about that a lot, right? Those engineering cloud skills, it only becomes real whenever they see it working in their ecosystem, and it's addressing the challenges that they have in their current environment.
Let me ask you this one, Mark, as well. Is there another one here around standards and
funny? I was just about to put that in.
Safety.
I was just about to put that in.
Guardrails.
I think. Yeah, I was just about to put that in. That's exactly where I was going. Funny.
Okay.
But as I was looking at this, I was thinking developer experience is usually a central team or capability helping the engineers remove friction, and there's definitely it's not the same as cloud operations. That's a different thing, but I wouldn't link them straight across, but I was thinking there is enabler to link those both. That's what I was thinking. So how do you want to phrase that? You could have, I was thinking of enabling constraints, or
enabling constraints. So as you're trying new things, you want an environment that, one, protects your organization, but also protects the teams and developments themselves.
Yeah, Mark, you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the big things in the cloud is if you can put good guardrails in place, if you can put good, a golden path, then developers can experiment without going, exposing you too much, right? And there's good patterns, good hardened, there's good.
And people might be wondering, like, well, what's the example of that? I mean, I think it's okay to share. One of the brilliant enabling constraints when we were at Liberty was no access to the AWS console apart from Sandbox. So it was a Sandbox environment. We go into the console. Everything after that was infrastructure as code. That forced everyone to use infrastructure as code in all your environments, from dev right the way up to production. That was a massive.
Yeah, everything goes to a CI/CD pipeline, right? For example, right? Everything's repeatable and immutable, right? There's loads of things here, right? Especially in the cloud, there's lots of good cloud guardrails that will give you rapid feedback on if you're not aligned to good practice, right? So, well-architected framework, tools like AWS config, Sneak, and other people have similar tools that will give you rapid feedback on.
Just in this context, though, right? So in terms of challenging the map, so in this environment, they're traditional cloud, and they probably do have custom enabling constraints. Mark, so you're mentioning there's a lot of services that kind of support this. So Dave, is enabling constraints in this particular context, is having that in product in the right spot? Should it be more towards custom built?
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe there are a bunch of, maybe there was a migration that happened and there's still some old stuff hanging around, and there's a bit of massaging to make sure we come up with cloud standards that work for the traditional stuff, but also work for our go forward. And takes a while to get that right.
Yeah, and we've seen there's a lot of early adopters of cloud. They've built a lot of capabilities and components to give them those guardrails that then the cloud provider then has replaced them with a commodity capability. But because you've invested in that and you've got it working and it's doing its job, there's an inertia barrier there to move across to leveraging some of the commodity type services, managed services that the cloud providers have brought on now.
Maybe, yeah. Cool, okay. I'm slightly conscious of time here, but I think we're okay.
Get into the why of movement. Start,
So it should just be heritage tech or whatever, right?
Heritage tech.
And you might call it out and say, you may have an internal product that you've built or something that does this job, and you would call it out here and say,
yeah,
we need to evolve past that too. And you can even
there's frequently, like I think when companies first move to the cloud, they'll custom write something that maybe does some observability or deployment, and then you realize a few years later that the cloud provider has brought something out that does that. So do you have the sunk cost fallacy that yours does it better, or are you going to say no? Our solution did a great job for 4 years, but now we're going to decommission it and use the commodity. Like things like logging libraries are a brilliant example of this. So are you
conscious of time? We've 9 minutes left. We have a few questions to get through, and how you might want to do some of the movement stuff as well. Whatever.
So just before, hopefully you could kind of see how we were sort of discussing the map here. This map is just okay, but it's really about the conversation that goes back and forward and that kind of debate about what's the inertia point, what needs to move, and what could actually move it, and you start mapping things out. And we'll come back to this in a few minutes and try and spot a few patterns.
Okay, a few questions come through. When deciding to place something on horizontal actions, do you always decide in terms of your organizational capabilities with respect to it, or can you work in terms of characteristics of the thing itself? So where you place something on the map?
So that's a good point. There's a quick answer. There's two parts to that. Something like something could be here, like engineer cloud skills could be here because in the organization, we have still not figured this out yet. We understand this needs to move. Or something could be here because developer experience is still quite immature in the industry. We are actually quite good at it, but it's very immature, not well understood. It still needs to evolve. So I think both are valid.
Yeah, I think like a lot, and like if we did this with a team and you brought in a new technology, it might be more to the left because it's a new technology, but it could be well proven, hardened component in the industry that other teams have had loads of success with. So it could be almost like a commodity for some orgs, but for your org, if it's brand new to your team, it could be over in Genesis. Hey, we're going to bring in some new feature or service, right? But what you'll find is then you can rapidly evolve it to commodity once your team gets good at it. For decision making, do you compare multiple maps corresponding to alternative scenarios?
That's a good question. I think we've always used a map as a thinking tool. It's not like you create a map and you keep it, say, right, we'll come back to that and we'll use that. It frames it helps a conversation. It helps a structured conversation. I'm not sure if I'd be referring to maps and looking at them and comparing them. It helps you with a conversation.
But you can certainly play out alternative scenarios, right? Where, hey, what happens if we have these capabilities or these components in place to meet a need? Then you can map out
that's good.
An alternative scenario. So yeah, you can definitely do that.
You can plot things out. You could say, if we move this over here, move that over there, what next?
Yeah, space has meaning in the maps, which is great. Can you talk about the challenges of taking a group from something like your example map to a real world problem? Yeah. So we did this a lot. And one of the best ones is mapping your tech stack with teams, where you would literally go through and map out, hey, who's your user, what's your purpose, what's your team exists for, and what are you doing to meet those needs, and from a tech stack point of view, right? And that would be very real, very sort of, hey, we have this component, this technology, this is the way we deliver the solution, here's our CI/CD pipeline. And then we'd have a conversation about, well, okay, well, how do we want to evolve this? How do we want to evolve this to meet our future needs? How do we want to evolve this to meet our strategies?
I'd say in them ones, Mark, it's very hard to hide something on a map in them sessions, like, so sometimes you can go into sessions and there's, a team is doing a lot of this unnecessary coding. It's out in custom, and we invest a lot of training in it and whatever, but then you look, there's maybe an alternative out in the product kind of rental space, and it can be quite an interesting conversation to you know, do teams really understand how we're adding value, and you know, and drawing people's attentions to those things. Things can become quite clear on maps, which can be awkward.
Yeah, and there's a lot more questions here. I know we have only 5 minutes. I think one there about would those enabling constraints be more visible to leadership? And again, that's a good challenge to the map. That's a good, it depends. Maybe it is. Depends.
So that's a very good question. Is, you know, does your CEO understand how important infrastructure as code is?
Yeah.
And the answer could be yes or no. Some CEOs will be very aware. Some won't have a clue. So that's a great question.
Yeah, if your leadership and your CEOs are saying, I want to make sure that my teams are delivering a well-architected solution, they're obviously clued into what that means. So then they might understand what the enabling constraints are to meet that need is. So yeah, it depends on the context. And it's a great question to ask, because then you can add some narrative and some challenge to it.
Yeah, and that could be an interesting one in terms as well. You may decide to have a strategy to move something up the map, you know, in terms of visibility. Yeah. That can be a conversation. Yeah. You know, like, do you feel like, you know, you're under pressure with dates, or are we making bad decisions? You know, or is our practices in place okay? Does the org understand it? Yeah. So that can be a good talking point, you know. So you got to look at the vertical as well.
Yeah, Gregor talks a lot about the elevator architect, and that could be something that you then take up to the C-suite to start educating them about what are those enabling constraints, what are the things we're going to start putting in to enable our cloud strategy.
Yeah.
So we have 3 minutes left, so we'll stop asking questions.
Okay.
So we can put it up.
Okay, so we can kind of maybe, I'll close it with some quick observations. I think, so when I step back and look at this map, and there's a nice question there about what happens after the map? Would you come back to it? There's some maps that usually, once you finish a map and you're fairly happy with it, you'll sit back and look at the shape of it and try and pull out some key observations. You may come back to that map in the future and say that was a really nice shape of a map. Let's go back to that and see what happened. Like, where are predictions? You know, did we manage to move these things? So we'd often save off a map and maybe come back to it later just to see what actually happened, because the evolutionary axis here, it's not about what happened in the past. It's what may happen going forward. So you're almost saying, what's the current shape of the landscape, and how do we move things forward in a certain way? So it's nice to come back and just see what happened and see what would change. So for this map, what I'm seeing, and the way my eye always goes, I would look at the custom column and say, what do we need to move out? So when I see here, there's a movement here, and there's dev experience. It seems like dev experience is something that we need to focus on. So I would say there's a call out there, dev experience requires focus, and we need to invest in enabling constraints. So for me, I might take an action there where maybe I might go back and talk to the CEO and say, well, have you discussed the cloud capability? And say, well, yeah, we're looking pretty good in a few areas, but we need to invest in developer experience and enabling constraints. And then you can back up the story of why that is. You can wrap a nice narrative around it, and there's consistency in the team because you've all had this discussion. So I think that idea of pulling out some key outcomes or observations, and you can then either show someone the map, or you can maybe even do slides or write a document saying this is why we need to do this, as you start to bulk this up with details. Yeah,
and one of the good things is that you can read through this and get the context really quickly again. Right, so you can leave it for 3, 4, 5 months, and the map you can get back and you can put yourself in that context. So it's a great way of shortcutting that. Oh, what was the context we're working in this scenario?
Yeah, so you're actually having strategies. Your strategies are literally, you know, how do we evolve our capability while kind of tying it back up to the, you know, the user need, and having really intelligent conversations and able to tie it back to this conversation, you know.
And the thing is as well, what you're really doing is we're challenging the map, we're creating a shared understanding, and we've got a shared language of things here. So if we were doing this map in 2 months' time, we might say, what are we going to do around developer experience? We all understand what that means and what the context of that is. So we're speaking the same language, which is important. And again, we talk about the value flywheel effect. It's something like some of your early phases are up here around kind of clarity of purpose and that kind of environment. And then you're getting down to next best action and long-term value down here. So this is that kind of movement where you start to see, but you're focusing on where do we need to focus on this. It would certainly be on the next best action kind of phase where I would see some areas of improvement. Okay, I'm conscious of time now. thanks for listening. Really appreciate the time on a Thursday of calling to the session. We'll try and pull out a lot of the questions and maybe answer a few of them offline, find a way of grabbing them all. Any final comments or to say goodbye, Mark or Mike?
No, I think hopefully it's demystified a little bit of this, and one of the barrier to entry is low. Just try it, right? You can start with sticky as the whiteboard. Just give it a go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Just for everyone on the call today, we will be sharing the recording and all the links to the documents in email later today. So keep your eye out for that. Once again, I want to thank David, Mark, and Michael for stepping in and helping us get a quick look at how to Wardley Map. You can, of course, find even more details, not just at all the resources they shared, but also, of course, in their book, Value Flywheel Effect. And they'll go into, in that book, even more details about other parts of mapping, including pipelines and overlays and how to even put the Value Flywheel Effect on there. So I do recommend that you take a look. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to see you at our next event.